Right, let's get started. It's my great pleasure to introduce my sort of coerced collaborator for tonight, Neale, who has a variety of roles, including being the ODT poetry editor, a job that she's done for the last 4.5 years. And when I came up with a concept of using a best-of selection of the poems and pitched it to Emma down the phone, there was a long groan and a slight silence, because she was thinking, do I really have to go through the 4.5 years worth of poems that are in a box under the house? But the answer was no, and she'll talk about how she came to the selection tonight, and how delighted we are that the poems that we selected, the poets themselves agreed to come along and read for us. So Emma has, as I said, a variety of roles. She's also a novelist, an editor, as well as a poet, and in fact her fourth book of poetry is called The Truth Garden, is coming out tomorrow, and we're delighted. I think she's going to do a reading out of that tonight. She's had a really busy year because she was this year's Earnings Fellow, and halfway through the year already, so a busy week as well with talking at the library on Sunday, coming along and doing this tonight, and of course having a launch book tomorrow. So if we could just ask Emma to come up and talk to us. Thanks.
Kia koutou, haere mai, Māori Language Week and National Poetry Day. So, ko Emma toku ingoa no Otapoti ahau, e ko atako aka toku moana. Suddenly there was the sea. The little man could only stare. He hadn't dreamed of the bigness of the sea. He hadn't dreamed of the blueness of it. He hadn't thought it would roll like kettle drums and swish itself onto the beach. He opened his mouth, and the drift and dream of it, the weave and the wave of it, the fume and the foam of it never left him again. At his feet, the sea stroked the sand with soft little paws. Farther out, the great, graceful breakers moved like kings into port, trailing the peacock-patterned sea behind them. A lot of you will know that was an extract from The Man Whose Mother Was a Pirate by Margaret Mahy, the unofficial children's poet laureate. It seems fitting to open with words from a writer who's been responsible for attuning so many readers to the music of the language, and who's therefore nurtured a new generation of writers. If you do have a glass, would you please raise it to Margaret Mahy's memory?
Right.
So, as Beverly said, I was supposed to start tonight with a little bit about the selection process. I realised that I would have 208 poems to go through if I was going to read the whole 4 years of the ODT's Monday's poems. So Beverly, who's kind of a managerial Rumpel Stiltskin, could hear the dread in my voice as she just explained, and she said, look, if it's National Poetry Day 2012, we're focusing on Monday's poem, why don't we just choose poems from the first 6 months of the year so far? So she made my job a lot easier, because I would have liked to have reprinted every poem I've ever chosen, and print them on posters and send them out nationwide, a bit of a softie like that. So basically the parameters that I had were the first 6 months of the year, and as with the principles behind the column anyway, I try to choose poems that are strong, obviously, and accessible to a wide readership. The paper does have physical limitations. We can only print poems that are 35 lines each, and the paper can't cope with anything typographically experimental. So that means that we choose a fairly narrow range of poems anyway. It does preclude quite a lot of avant-garde experimental work. There are some readers who would tell you that the range is actually wider than they would like it to be. As you probably know, there have been a few disgruntled letters in the past about the fact that Monday's poem doesn't seem to overtly rhyme. There is a small but hardy population with their fingers firmly in their ears who don't believe that the name of poetry should be given to anything that is written with A, Milne or pound ears. And many of us might well enjoy the kind of poetry that those two writers are a shorthand for. But I hope the column helps readers appreciate that poetry can also have a looser music and have a sort of more permeable sense of boundaries So my other brief as poetry editor is to try and have a democratic mix of new writers alongside those of the track record. We're extremely lucky that the paper attracts quite a high calibre of writers, be they at the very start of their careers or consummate long-term professionals. One of the things I love about this job is that sometimes there actually is a drought in the unsolicited submissions. So I can go out and ask poets whose work I know is already of a high standard, see if there's anything that they haven't sent out elsewhere. But also, because I have a now and then connection to the university, I do have, I guess, a closer link with new student poets than my predecessor managed to have. So I can scout out the new voices when things seem to have gone quiet on that front for a while. We're very lucky that we've got people who are both very new here this evening and established consummate writers, and they've given up their time for us tonight. Two of the poster poets have travel or family commitments, so I'm going to read their work to start with. The first one is Brian Turner, who was my predecessor as the editor of Monday's Poem. He's based in central Otago. He was once a Burns Fellow and, amongst many other awards, in 2009 received the Prime Minister's Award for Literary Achievement in Poetry. And if I read you his full list of achievements, we'd be here for about two poets who are present, so I'll just read you the poem. And it's on the poster behind me. Blue. The sky is blue with a blue we imagine without trying, used to anyway, before screens filled too much of one's days. I saw blue in you today. Nothing got in the way. Your skirt flared as the door slammed, or hearts heavy with hurt, then lifted a little as you rounded the corner of the house. And I thought, petulance gets none of us anywhere conciliatory, nor misunderstanding. And nasty, intense sours when the issues are our own mainly, not the others. So the question is, who's playing the game, and with whom, and to what end? I saw blue in you that may have come from me today. If so, I'm sorry. Blue gets in the way too often, I know. I deeply wish it wasn't so. How about you? And this next one is by Annie Villiers, who is a poet based up in Broad Bay. She has had 2 books published. One was called Parallel Lines, Riding the Central Otago Rail Trail, which was brought out by Longacre Press and was a collaborative work with John Z. Robinson. And she's also published a novel called Apollo's Line. This is called Deconstruction. Metaphysically speaking, it's flared nostrils at 10 paces. Ice woman, stone man, as piece by piece your collective history is deconstructed. Helpless, the children look on, fearful for their own cell memories, in case they too are in danger of disassemblement. Here a vase, and there a cup from which both drank once, the honey of existence. Memory of that particular laughter, and all the others besides, shut away, out of sight, out of mind, waiting for some distant synapse in the pit of some bleak future night, to bring it flooding back, when, with the wisdom of time, it is no longer restrained, and you remember, fire woman, earth man. Annie reads that, she's like a slow fuse glinting and burning. I feel like a pale imitation of her voice. And now I'm going to imitate me, so I hope it's convincing. First of all, I'll read the poem on the poster, and then I'll read a slightly longer one from The Truth Garden. Proposal. With his hands on her hips, as if in an ice dance, he suggests in the tone of a man who has just said, let's move the blue armchair closer to the window so we can bring the hills into the frame. Let's have another baby. And it's like that moment in the drink-fed conversation at a bar in a town far from home, when the too handsome stranger drew out an edge of silver, like a ring to catch the light, then asking her how she liked her sex, pressed the knife's metal tongue to the flicker at her throat, as gently as if a child were dressing her neck with threaded stalks, white petals. And as the moment walking past an unlit downtown doorway, where footsteps start their time-bomb tick behind you, stay calm, she winks, no sudden moves. This next one, I had read recently, I think, at the circadian rhythm reading, so if there was anyone in the audience there, you can put your fingers in the ears and have a little sleep. It's called Dormant. We've let the children overhear us fret about the state of the world to come, but it's been a beautiful day. They're not scared. They've already decided the best thing for it is to get on ahead with growing up, by which time together they'll have perfected one single magnificent glinting invention to defend the entire planet. These two small braves want each other to stay the night. There's no time to waste. They'll get back to work the minute they wake. Of course we do what adults must do and drive all the normal, boring, reassuring bargains. If you bathe, if you're in bed by 8, then yes, you can be our only hope. You can save the world. Freshly showered, toweled, brushed and buttoned, they shuffle down into sleeping bag talk. Secrets brothers, scheme brothers, plot brothers, what if brothers. They lay their imaginations down side by side, thin blades in the blood-black night, press their words to each other, warm as wrists, and as they slow into sleep, they look at me with such wild, happy, tired faces. It's true, they seem like kin. Yet later, as I slip her in to place extra blankets over them, our visitor looks unlike even himself. Pale and luminous as moon herring, he's still, stiller than ever I've seen him. The daylight child is all monkey, firecracker, popcorn, slingshot, cat gun, balloon game, star jump, fence straddle, wrestle tackle, rabbit shot, shortcut. How do you spell parallel? I'm hungry, eat that. More please, Lego base, chocolate base, snowball flight, dog step, dog fetch. What's that I found? Pen knife, whittle track, supplejack, possum track. His silence now a soft shock. He's fallen back into himself like a fountain turned down. And as if dreams can lift from the clean scalps of boys, the way fragrance steals from ripe jasmine, I find I wish I could snip a wisp of his fox gold hair and an ash blonde curl of my son's, press them into the hurt earth like balm, and, as in some new myth, have the locks spring up in an army of calm, leaning into his trees into thought, hearts branched against the dark. Thank you.
Can you hear at the back? Great. Now I'm going to introduce each of the next poets in turn, and as Emma said, we could do very long bios for a lot of them, but I'm going to keep them short, simply because I want more room in times of poems, as I'm sure you do. But, you know, that's what Google's for, and that's what the library's downstairs for. Jury number 811. The poetry section. Right. Our next poet is someone that I got to know well because she was my creative writing tutor. She has did run courses at Aoraki Polytech for 9 years and is now teaching privately, so if you're inspired by anyone to know it, you should come and learn how some bits of the trade from Diane. She is a poet, a novelist, a memoirist, and often all three in the same book, as you'll certainly find out in her 2006 book, Here Comes Another Vital Moment. And I've always thought if Diane was a singer, she would be a true crossover artist. So please welcome Diane Brown.
Thank you. This I always wish that I'd written about my own kids when they were small. Mind you, I wouldn't have been able to write such wonderful poems, I don't think. So instead of writing about my kids, I've written a lot about my parents, actually, because I think this older age is a very interesting stage, and there's almost a reversion back to childhood anyway. So I've written lately 2 poems about my mother, who's 91, who lives in Auckland, and the only thing that you need to know is that she lives in Henderson, and there's a bit here about Remuera. I don't know whether you know Remuera and Henderson and the demographics, that my mother seems to think that the power does not work as well in Henderson as it does in Remuera. She's always thought that, long before she was 91. My mother at 91. Your mother's house has no windows and her clock was missing numbers. Looks like dementia, my father said. 4 years on, he's dead. She's 91, living at home alone, burning the bottoms clean out of pots. None left for you to inherit, she says. Today, her slow cooker's taking too long to cook corned beef. There's a summer storm. According to her, they've turned the power down, reduced its potency. Only in Henderson mind. Everything is political or conspiracy. In Remuera, ovens burn, hot as ever. Philip says, the bad weather follows us wherever we go, I say. Follows him, not you. Don't you take the blame, she responds, not missing a beat. Makes me wonder if she was pretending all along, deliberately omitting windows and numbers in the doctor's clinic, dottiness being one way to escape. And this one was just written the other day, losing her purse. In the days before supermarkets, I'd do the shopping for my mum at the grocer's down the road. She was very particular, smelling the cheese, inspecting the bacon for fat, too much and it would have to be taken back. There was the change to be counted, checked and rechecked, put carefully away in her small purse. Once I stole a shilling, which fell out of my pocket into the toilet. It lay there in the pan. She knew I was the guilty one. 50 years on, and she's lost her purse with all my cards in it. Her voice quavers over the phone. I tell her she has no cards. My brother's got them for safekeeping. How will I buy food with no money, she asks. I remind her she doesn't shop anymore. She never learnt to drive. When my dad died, it was back to sending the kids. I'm too far away, but my brothers, who never went to the grocer's and don't know her tastes, are faithful. The food goes into her fridge, and since she's gone off eating, most of it gets thrown out sooner or later. Her younger self would be horrified at the waste. As I say goodbye, she cries again. I've lost my purse. I've no bread. She's lucky, I think, knowing whether she eats it or not. She still has children to turn up, carrying milk and bread. Perhaps the title of this poem is appropriate after that one. It's called Euthanasia Rules. It wasn't showing any signs of life, he says, when I asked what happened to the rhubarb I planted, as if he expected it to sit up, have a discussion, perhaps choose its preferred method of cooking. Not much hope for me then, should I find myself wired to a machine, unable to produce even the smallest green leaf. So you all know. And this one is the one that was in the paper, Morning Report. Today is a non-pull day, meaning instead of pumping legs up and down in deep water, star jumps, and balancing on a dumbbell in an effort, probably misguided, to prolong life. We can lie side by side with tea and newspaper, the sun diminishing the bad news while we tackle the daily quiz. I know names, he knows history, geography. If there's sport, not rugby or cricket, we're both in trouble. 100% we high-five, then to make it even righter with the world, we read one poem each before hunger compels us to pull back the covers on such smug warmth, such ease. Surely there'll come a day there's only one, then the quiz too hard, the poem's too sad. Thanks.